It only took one episode, one brutally sharp, irreverent South Park parody. And suddenly, the Snow White remake was no longer just a controversial reboot. It was a full-blown internet spectacle. The animated satire didn't hold back. In true South Park fashion, the show zeroed in on Rachel Zegler, portraying her as an over-the-top woke crusader ranting about saving society and rewriting fairy tales. The parallels were unmistakable. Clips from her real interviews, where she called the original 1937 Snow White weird and outdated, had already stirred fan backlash. But now, with South Park echoing those very sentiments in cartoon form, the outrage went nuclear. Within hours of the episode airing, memes flooded social media. Hashtags exploded. Side-by-side comparisons between Zegler's real quotes and her animated counterpart spread like wildfire. For many fans, especially those already skeptical of Disney's constant remakes, it wasn't just funny. It felt like vindication. It confirmed what critics had been saying for months. This reboot wasn't about honoring a classic. It was about tearing it down. And Rachel Zegler had become the face of that destruction. The satire didn't just mock a movie. It poured gasoline on a fire that had been quietly smoldering for over a year. And Rachel? According to sources close to the situation, she wasn't just upset. She was furious. Behind the scenes, Rachel Zegler was reportedly livid. According to insider leaks, she felt blindsided by the South Park episode. Not just because she was mocked, but because the parody twisted her public image into a punchline. Her frustrations weren't just aimed at the show's creators. They extended to Disney too. She believed the studio had hung her out to dry, refusing to issue any defense or even acknowledge the satire. For an actress leading one of Disney's biggest upcoming films, the silence was deafening. And it wasn't just the parody that set her off. It was what it represented. To Zegler, the episode didn't feel like harmless comedy. It felt like an attack on her values, her career, and her identity as a performer trying to bring a modern twist to a classic. Rumors swirled that she considered releasing a public statement clarifying her stance on the original Snow White, maybe even pushing back against the mockery. But Disney, worried that any response would only stoke the flames, allegedly urged her to stay quiet. The result? A high-profile star fuming in the background, feeling gagged by the very company she was supposed to represent. A movie still months away from release, and already imploding under the weight of controversy. And the internet? It was only just getting started. Inside the walls of Disney HQ, the mood was anything but magical. Executives were already juggling a string of underwhelming releases, internal Marvel shakeups, and a growing crisis of confidence in the brand's future. The last thing they needed was South Park dragging one of their most iconic properties, and their lead actress, into the crosshairs of cultural mockery. But that's exactly what happened. What made this worse was timing. The Snow White remake wasn't just another reboot. It was supposed to be a crown jewel, a bold reimagining of the film that launched Disney's animation empire. But instead of excitement, it had become a lightning rod. And now, thanks to South Park, that lightning was striking harder than ever. Executives scrambled. Emergency meetings were reportedly held almost daily. Public relations teams were placed on high alert. And behind closed doors, Disney's leadership debated one uncomfortable question. Had they lost control of the narrative? The concern wasn't just about bad press. It was about brand erosion. For a company built on carefully crafted fairy tales, the idea that its own remake was being laughed off by millions before it even hit theaters was a PR nightmare. Worse yet, they couldn't fire back. Responding to South Park was a trap, one Disney knew all too well. The show had built its legacy on roasting sacred cows. Anyone who tried to clap back only gave the satire more power. So the studio went silent, hoping the storm would pass. But the silence said more than words ever could. And the internet filled in the blanks with chaos, speculation, and outrage. As the controversy swelled, Disney's next move wasn't bold. It was silent. One by one, Rachel Zegler's scheduled appearances vanished. Talk show interviews? Canceled. Red carpet events? Quietly removed from press schedules. A rumored Saturday Night Live appearance in full Snow White costume? Scrapped without explanation. The official word from Disney's camp? Scheduling conflicts. But insiders weren't buying it. Behind the scenes, sources claimed the truth was far messier. Disney, already reeling from the public backlash, had no idea what Rachel might say if given a microphone. Her past interviews, where she casually described the original Snow White as weird and took shots at its romantic storyline, had already alienated a big chunk of Disney's most loyal fan base. So the strategy became simple. Contain the damage by keeping Zegler off the grid. But the silence didn't help. If anything, it fueled even more speculation. Why was Disney muzzling its own lead actress? Was the studio panicking over deeper issues with the film? And most importantly, was the Snow White remake already doomed before it even hit theaters? To make matters worse, Rachel reportedly saw the decision as a betrayal. Some close to her camp claimed she felt sidelined, even sacrificed to save Disney from further embarrassment. She had signed on to promote the film. Now she was watching it unravel from the sidelines, gagged and ghosted by the very machine that once touted her as its next big star. And the internet? It noticed everything. While the media storm raged around Rachel Zegler, another storyline quietly gained traction. And it had all the ingredients of a Hollywood tabloid bombshell. Tension was reportedly brewing between Zegler and her co-star, Gal Gadot, who plays the evil queen. At first, it was just whispers. Awkward red carpet photos, moments where the two actresses avoided eye contact, rumors of behind-the-scenes drama. But then came the awards show. At a major public event, Rachel and Gal stood just feet apart and didn't acknowledge each other once. No smiles, no side chats, no shared interviews. Fans noticed. The speculation exploded. Some insiders claimed the friction had been building for months. Rachel, already known for her strong opinions about the film's modern messaging, allegedly clashed with Gal over the tone and direction of several scenes. One rumor even suggested that Gal's improvised lines, subtle, sharp, and funny, were stealing focus from Rachel's more serious portrayal. According to one leak, Zegler complained that Gadot was hijacking key moments and undercutting her character's arc. The response? Studio interference. Entire scenes were reportedly rewritten or cut altogether to recenter Rachel as the star. But rather than solve the problem, the edits only fueled the narrative that the production was spiraling out of control. For fans, it was yet another red flag, a supposed fairy tale reboot turning into a backstage power struggle. And then South Park stepped in again. Their parody didn't just target Rachel. It mocked the entire dynamic, with the animated Snow White screaming at the evil queen for stealing her spotlight. It was a savage exaggeration, but it hit way too close to home. By this point, the internet wasn't just watching a controversial remake, it was watching a slow-motion implosion, starring two A-listers who couldn't even fake getting along. Just when things couldn't get messier, another controversy reignited. One that had been simmering since the moment Rachel Zegler was announced as the new Snow White. For many, it wasn't just her comments that rubbed the wrong way. It was her casting. Rachel is Colombian American. She's outspoken, she's confident. And she doesn't look like the pale, raven-haired princess millions grew up with. That was enough for some corners of the internet to cry foul. How can you cast a Latina actress as someone literally named Snow White? They argued. First a black Ariel, now this? The conversation took a hard turn, from film criticism to identity politics. And suddenly, the Snow White remake became ground zero for a larger cultural battle. Some fans were angry, saying Disney had abandoned the original character's visual identity. Others defended the move, calling it a step toward better representation. But as the South Park parody ripped through pop culture, poking fun at Disney's diversity-first casting, those tensions reached a boiling point. The backlash wasn't just about skin color, it was about perception. Critics accused Disney of using diversity as a marketing tool while gutting the soul of a classic. They argued that the studio wasn't modernizing Snow White, it was replacing her. And thanks to Rachel's own interviews, where she mocked the love story and called the original film weird, It felt to some like she was trying to erase the past rather than honor it. For Disney, the optics were disastrous. Instead of leading a heartfelt reimagining, the film now seemed trapped in an identity crisis. With Rachel at the center of every headline, every meme, and every fight about what Disney should be in 2025. While the internet debated Rachel Zegler, diversity, and fairy tale fidelity, chaos was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. The Snow White remake, originally slated for release more than a year earlier, had already been delayed once. But now, insiders were saying the film had entered what one source called emergency triage mode. Full-scale reshoots were underway. Again, entire sequences had reportedly been cut, scripts rewritten. And the third act? One insider described it as a disaster that no one could agree on. The goal wasn't just to clean up the narrative, it was to repair the optics. Some scenes were restructured to shift more focus to Gal Gadot's evil queen. Others were softened to make Rachel's Snow White appear more likable, less combative, more classic. But every change raised new questions. Was this still Zegler's modern Snow White? Or just a stitched-together Frankenstein built from PR panic and damage control? The set, according to reports, had become tense. Morale was low. Crew members were on edge. Directors clashed with studio executives over tone and direction. And all the while, Disney's top brass hovered anxiously, trying to fix the movie without knowing exactly what was broken. There was even talk of trimming entire musical numbers that had been hyped early in production. Not for artistic reasons, but out of fear they'd become meme fodder online. For fans watching from the outside, it was becoming clearer by the day. This wasn't a bold reimagining anymore. It was a movie fighting for survival, tangled in creative contradictions and corporate second-guessing. And the deeper Disney dug into rewrites and reshoots, the more it looked like they were chasing an outcome they couldn't define. And maybe never had in the first place. At some point, the movie itself stopped being the main event. The spectacle around Snow White 2025, the drama, the canceled interviews, the feuds, the memes, the South Park mockery, became the real show. Every day brought a new rumor, another leaked clip, another cryptic social media post. And in the middle of it all was Rachel Zegler, caught in a firestorm that no amount of PR spin could control. Once hailed as one of Hollywood's rising stars, Zegler suddenly found her entire image rewritten. Not by her work, but by internet commentary, tabloid headlines, and animated satire. The same interviews that once painted her as thoughtful and progressive were now repackaged as arrogant and dismissive. Her efforts to modernize a classic? Reframed as disrespectful and tone-deaf. The backlash wasn't just against the film anymore. It was personal. Even her supporters, who appreciated her outspokenness and saw value in reimagining Disney's legacy, found themselves drowned out. The louder, angrier voices took over, shaping the narrative in real time. And each time Rachel stayed silent, whether by choice or under pressure from Disney, the speculation only grew. By now, it was hard to tell what the film even was anymore. Was it a daring reinvention that never got a fair shot? Or a misguided overhaul of something timeless? Was Rachel a victim of corporate mishandling? Or a cautionary tale of celebrity overreach in the age of social media? What was clear? The spotlight had shifted. And it wasn't on the story of Snow White. It was on the story of a star, a studio, and a remake spiraling out of control. What started as a bold reimagining of a beloved fairy tale has become something else entirely. A cautionary tale about what happens when modern messaging, corporate branding, and internet culture collide. Snow White 2025 was supposed to be Disney's next big hit. Instead, it's now better known for the controversies it stirred, the silence it maintained, and the backlash it couldn't outrun. Rachel Zegler may not have set out to become a lightning rod, but that's exactly where she landed. Whether you see her as a fearless artist or a reckless provocateur, her role in this media storm is undeniable. In South Park? It didn't create the chaos. It simply held up a mirror, laughed at what it saw, and let the internet do the rest. As for Disney, the once untouchable empire now finds itself struggling to control narratives it used to write. The studio that built its legacy on happily ever afters is learning, the hard way, that reimagining the past means stepping into a future where every misstep gets amplified, memed, and immortalized. So, will Snow White 2025 rise from the ashes and surprise everyone? Or has it already been buried beneath a mountain of bad press, missed opportunities, and a cartoon that hit just a little too close to reality? Only time, and maybe the box office, will tell. But one thing's for sure, no one will forget the fairy tale that lost its magic before it even began.